Hello and welcome to Breaking the Mould, a podcast from Action Funder. Action Funder works with innovative businesses and inspiring non-profit leaders. We enable the two to work together to create measurable change. In this podcast, we're going to introduce you to some of the change makers we know and admire. Get ready to hear about inspiring campaigns, stories of impact, challenges and advice from people dedicated to taking action on issues that matter. I'm Sophie, your host, and I'm excited to welcome Andrew Cooper, Head of Partnerships and Funding at Housing Association Sovereign Network Group, or SNG. Creating social value is crucial to SNG. That's why they've set themselves a big, bold goal of investing £100 million through their community foundation in the next 10 years. With Andrew, we talk about how that investment will support their residents, from individual grants to funding essential services. We talk about what innovation in this space looks like, the importance for businesses to work with their communities to understand where the need is, and how best to answer that need. Let's dive in. Hi Andrew, welcome to Breaking the Mould.
Hi Sophie, lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries, it's great to have you here to talk about innovation in funding and in social housing in particular. Now, we met a few years ago as we connected through our Backyard Nature campaign that we run at Action Funder, and that's kind of been and gone as we got a lot of young people connected to green spaces in estates around the country. And now we're starting a new partnership with yourself at Sovereign Network Group, or SNG. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about SNG and the responsibilities of a housing association.
Yeah, of course. It'd be great to tell you about SNG. So, SNG, Sovereign Network Group, they're quite a new organisation. We merged in October last year, so October 2023. And previously there were two organisations. So there was Sovereign Housing Association, which I joined in 2020, and Network Homes. Together they've got a combined size of 84,000 homes, and they cover a big chunk of southern England, so all the way across from Devon, Dorset, Bristol, all the way across to London and Hertfordshire.
And what's the difference? Where's the new areas that you're covering now that you're working with Network Group?
So Sovereign covered probably southern and south and southwest England, so places like Hampshire, Oxfordshire, Berkshire, but probably didn't go any further eastwards than that, all the way across to Devon and Dorset. So the merger between Sovereign and Network is now really excitingly. We've got housing in London, so places inner city London, places like Lambeth, Westminster, Brent, as well as Hertfordshire, particularly a big chunk of homes in East Hertfordshire.
So you're basically taking over the whole of the south, anything M4 south, pretty much.
Yes, basically.
What we call the south. What's your role at SNG? What do you do there?
So I'm head of partnerships and funding. So again, a fairly newish role. So I joined what was then Sovereign in 2020, became head of partnerships and funding last year. And my role is kind of, as it says on the tin, is looking at partnerships. So how we develop partnerships with community organisations, local authorities, businesses, other housing association, others who really share our common aims and around community investment. Bringing in external funding, so we have an aspiration that we can bring in external funding that's going to support our communities and our customers. Mm-hmm. And also my role is particularly around kind of social impact measurements, so how we measure the impact of all the work going on in the communities, looking at our grants programme, and then social value for our supply chain and some work around social enterprise as well. So quite a range of different activity. And very importantly for our conversation today is our grants programme, so how we award grants to community organisation and people we want to work with.
What motivates you to work in social housing particularly?
So social housing is not the career kind of I didn't end up in social housing thinking that was the thing that was kind of destined for me, and I think that's sometimes something that happens with a lot of people working in housing. So previously to this role, I worked abroad for a year in Africa. I worked in teaching. I worked in local government. And then I began working for another housing association, and I just really enjoyed the kind of breadth of the role. I worked for a local authority around housing, and then I worked for another housing association. And particularly working for a housing association, because housing associations are public sector, but they're not kind of quite private sector either.
Yeah, they kind of sit somewhere in the middle, don't they?
they sit in the middle, but everything they do is around the social purpose. So
Mm.
for SNG, our social purpose is so important. So although we do make a profit, it doesn't go to kind of the shareholders. That's reinvested back into our communities and back into our kind of building and maintaining our homes.
Mm.
So that's something that's really exciting for me. And also the other thing about social housing is who we provide housing for. We're providing housing for some of the most vulnerable people in society. So we've got 210,000 people roughly who live in our homes.
Mm.
Some of them have got a range of support needs, and that really kind of is something that's really important to me. And my value is about how we can support others in society, particularly people who might be more vulnerable or not had the same life chances as some of us, and how we can support people to thrive in
Yeah.
their community and their tenancy. And I suppose the most important thing that we do is kind of providing someone a good quality home to live in.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had a quite similar career path. I'll call it a squiggly career path. A little bit of this and a little bit of that. So you've kind of cherry picked little things along the way that have perhaps got you into this particular role.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's interesting when you go for different roles and different things you pick up and learn from. So
Yeah.
working in that in the public sector, for example, you kind of really kind of have to how you work efficiently because you haven't got massive amount of
Mm.
budgets.
Yeah.
How you're kind of very accountable to the kind of the community that you're serving. Working for a housing association who are slightly different, they do have a bit more flexibility, but there is much
Okay.
more kind of like a commercial focus there.
Yeah.
But then is how you can be innovative. So how you can kind of
Mm.
like shape your projects and your opportunities and what you're trying to do, how you can do things innovative, and that's something that I particularly
Hmm.
enjoy in my role at the moment. Is how we've got massive challenges that we kind of have as a society we're facing, and some of the things that S&G is looking at about some of those support needs for our customers, the cost of living, for example, climate
Yeah.
change. So many things happening there, kind of responding to even now the after effects of the pandemic and how that's impacted people and some of the most
Hmm.
vulnerable, and then how you can develop initiatives and projects and partnerships that are going to support people and support communities. And for us, place is so important. Housing's
Yeah.
doesn't just go and disappear once a grant finishes. We're in communities for the long term, and how we can make a partnership and project, and how that could make a difference to that place and that community. And that's something that is really important to us, and I think that's something that's really exciting as well about seeing some of the physical things about place, but also how you can
Yeah.
have that impact in a particular community and what difference that can make to the people who live there. Mainly for positive, but if you don't do things right, it can obviously have that negative impact as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of it both sides of the coin as well. Obviously, everyone's trying to do the best they can for communities, as we are at Action Funder as well. It's like trying to work out where is the greatest need. Is it even about the greatest need? Sometimes it's about where's the most appropriate need for a particular community. We've got a tool on Action Funder where you can look at community need and what that need looks like at that time. What would you say? What's the biggest need for your communities at the moment? Would you say?
That's a great question. I think for us, the overriding need at the moment, and there's a whole mix of things going on. So we're facing kind of a housing crisis at the moment. I
Mm.
think about 130,000 children are in temporary accommodation because they
Mm.
can't be adequately housed. Homelessness is a massive issue, so we see that as a housing association, kind of providing affordable homes.
Yeah.
That is a huge problem. For the people actually living in our homes and communities, probably the biggest impact at the moment is poverty
Mm.
and the cost of living crisis. I think last year to the year before, we had something like a 240% increase in terms of people turning to us as a landlord for financial support.
Yeah.
And that is down to people who might not traditionally gone to us as a landlord for that, but
Mm.
people really kind of facing kind of crisis points. We have a number of discretionary grants and support, but this is an increasing thing, and we're seeing this more and more that people are particularly hard hit over recently with the cost of living crisis.
And you've also got that macro environment of the housing crisis, which is layers upon layers, kind of top to bottom, I guess is one way of putting it. But you've got it as the day to days, but also within this wider context of housing being absolute critical mass point as well. You mentioned there about some of the things you do for individuals. So that's quite interesting. Some discretionary loans. It's quite hard to say that you do for individual people as well. Do you do anything else?
So yeah, we do have a comprehensive offer. So we do lots of work in partnership as well. So we've got a financial and digital inclusion team who've really scaled up and that was down to SNG really recognising that we needed to kind of put extra resources into kind of supporting our kind of most vulnerable customers. So we've got a range of things such as crisis support, so supporting around things such as heating their home,
Yeah.
for, being accessing food, being able to accessing equipment or resources such as carpet or white goods. But then what we are really focusing on is you might offer someone some immediate support, but what makes a long term difference? And we've had some examples of people we've supported, and they might initially come to us, and they might be able to access a fuel voucher, for example, which helps them to heat their home. But then that's led to further conversations, and it might be able to access our employment and skills support to help them into better paid work, or being able to access our debt advice team, which supports people to manage their debts, or our welfare benefits to support in terms of welfare benefits that might not have been accessed. So things that are going to make a long term impact to people is really important.
So it becomes like a web of support, really, that you can offer people in lots of different areas.
Web of sport, yeah, great way of putting it.
You can steal.
Yeah, web support, and we can't do, yeah, love that. We can't do everything, but how we can do, and there's some
Yeah.
people sometimes like we have a great relationship with some citizens advice bureaus, so we recognise that they've got particular skills and expertise. So sometimes we might be working in partnership with that. We work with a great social enterprise called Pocket Power, who are really good about things like energy advice and energy guidance and helping people access discretionary support from utility companies.
Yeah.
So we link people up with them. So really understanding what that person needs, maybe what we can support, but also other organisations who have specialisms and capacity that we don't, how we can work in partnership with that to support someone as well.
Yeah, I guess it's signposting as
Yes.
well, isn't it? In a similar way that you would do in any kind of support situation. We'll be working with SNG on your grassroots core kind of grant funding, where so that's like not so much on the individual level, but at group level, so community organisations that are working within your communities. Are you looking for or looking to work with communities that are near your housing stock, on your housing stock? How does that kind of work for you? How do you map out what communities you support?
So yeah, we work in a massive area across southern England.
Mm.
We're open to a conversation with anybody who's operating working in those areas. A key focus for us, because of how we're funded and how we work, and we want to see those differences I mentioned earlier about being place based. So we want to see kind of those outcomes in places where we've got housing. So, for example, that might be organisations who are working kind of in and around where we've got housing, or supporting our broader communities that we'd be keen to do. We would be looking really for people who can work for our residents, people living in our homes, but they might not be delivering a service that's working with at the moment, but they might be thinking, oh, actually, we can access some funding via a new partnership with Action Funder that will enable them to expand their service to maybe it might be a housing estate that we've got that people can access,
Yeah.
or to target some of our customers and communities. So we're really looking to see how we can work in partnership with organisations around our housing stock, but we wouldn't expect them to just be delivering our service just for people living in their SNG home, but that things that our customers would be able to access and include as well.
Okay.
And part of our reason for having grants is we really are passionate about really growing and building up some community groups in our areas, so how we can work with them, and there's a bit of funding that helps them to access that funding, and then they might be able to grow and expand some of their services. That's great for us because that means that they're going to be around and supporting that community.
So you're looking at how more funding can increase their funding opportunities, if you see what I mean. So it's a growth area for the groups as well as for SNG and their communities.
Yeah, definitely. We're looking as well as kind of the impact that they're making in terms of the people they're supporting. We're also really interested in what impact it's making on that organisation to help them to grow their capacity,
Yeah.
and them to be around. And it's such a difficult time for the charity and community sector at the moment.
Yeah.
If you've got a big community centre, you've got to figure out how to cover those running costs of that. So things that we can do to support that community group is really important, so they can be around to continue offering their services.
I was going to ask if you could describe what kind of projects you support through your funding. You've described there a kind of way of working, I guess, with projects in terms of expanding their capacity, which it sounds like is an absolute need at the moment in communities. But is there a kind of project that you have as like something you're really keen to support?
Yeah, well, I maybe mentioned a couple that are probably quite different, but it gives the type of thing that we do. So we work
Yeah.
with in Bristol with a brilliant youth organisation called Young Bristol, who've got a range of different ways that they work. They've got activity centres, they do youth outreach work. One of the things that we're really excited that we've done with them more recently, we've helped fund a mobile youth provision called like the Youth Bus on Wheels with a number of other partners, and that's enabled them to be able to expand their premises rather than just being based on one centre, to go out to
Mm.
particular areas or hotspots, or you mentioned need earlier, areas that really need some youth provision and youth outreach, to go to those
Yeah.
communities. So that would be one that's more of a mobile provision, and another one would be on the Isle of Wight. There's a community group called Pan Together up near Newport on the Isle of Wight. If anybody knows the Isle of Wight from holidays,
Not
and
for a long time.
well, Pan Together is brilliant organisations. They work with a community centre there. They've got a community cafe, various projects there. They've got a food bank there, and that's right next to a big concentration of our housing in Newport. So we've got about 4,000 homes on the Isle of Wight, and it's brilliant that Pan Together been able to support that organisation and all the range of community services they do, from kind of supporting the food bank there to having the community cafe, community activities. They've got activities for unemployment, digital inclusion. So being able to support some of the activities and the core costs of running that centre
Mhm.
is really exciting, because we know where they are. That's kind of a key anchor organisation within that community.
That's a really interesting term, anchor organisation, because it sounds like those mobile units as well. Almost where you're offering is it's the classic model, isn't it, of a community asset which offers lots of different opportunities. What's the benefit to SNG of kind of engaging with communities in the estates where you're providing housing? Like, what's the business? I guess do you call yourselves a business? What is the business benefit?
Yeah, we're business for social purpose. Well, I suppose, but firstly, in terms of working with our customers have a big input into how we run as an
Mm,
organisation. So we have our customers that sit on our board and our advisory groups and support to really kind of like shape our direction and how we run as
mm,
an organisation, and that's absolutely central to how we see ourselves. Our customers aren't a passive voice; they're very much co-working with us, delivering, challenging us, and helping guide our strategy and how we work. So again, working with our communities, we don't want to go to a community and say, okay, we're the big housing association. We know exactly what the challenges are and what should be going
mm.
on in Bristol or Newport, the Isle of Wight. It's all about listening to those people who actually are there, what they need, what their approach are, what their
Yeah,
priorities are, and also, really importantly, what skills they've got, what their passions, what their interests, what they've got to offer as well, and how we can build on that. So, more of an asset-based approach rather than just coming in and then making assumptions about an area. That's definitely how we want to work, and really organisations who share that way. The other thing, just on the grants, I think one of the fantastic things about grants is that it lets an organisation tell you what they want to do, so what they're passionate, rather than us giving out a contract or saying go and do this.
yeah.
An organisation tells us what they want to do, which is again really exciting to see those different approaches.
Yeah, it's that classic community thing, isn't it? Of do with, not do to, not do to the communities, but work with them. I've been approached before for Backyard Nature from an organisation that wanted to do something without asking the community what it is that they wanted, and we had to turn it down because I was like, well, I can't, I don't know if that's useful actually, and if that community is going to need it or want it. Um, I'm going to loop back to grant funding, and because that's how we're going to be working together over the next year or so,
Yes,
which is really
I'm very
exciting.
excited about that.
Yeah, it's really good. And obviously, we are really keen in this podcast to talk about innovation, and you've already touched on it a few times in what you said, both in the way you work with communities and how SNG is approaching how they want to do things. So, what does SNG hope to achieve by being more innovative in the funding space?
Well, I think we're learning as an organisation. So we got plans this year to create a community foundation, and that community foundation will invest 100 million into communities over the next 10 years. We're very open to the fact that we're getting input from our customers, all the people who work for
Mm,
SNG and people work in partnership with us of what that community foundation should be doing. So there's a legacy of former sovereign, former network, what we've done before, but we really want to kind of like get input to shape that. So in terms of how that then looks like for what our grants program is and why we want that to be innovative, I think it's about almost like test different approaches for us. So
yeah.
we're excited about having some different themed programs from almost like small grants that might be a few £100s up to much bigger grants
Hmm.
around different themes. And that really helps us kind of test and help us learn. And then as we're scaling up to different things with the Community Foundation, what works well and maybe what doesn't work so well.
Mm,
And we're really passionate about social impact. So which things make the social impact? So by having some grants and pots around particular themes, different ways of awarding them, being able to
hmm.
get different ways of uh, managing them and getting colleagues
Hmm.
and customers involved in how these grants are given out is really exciting for us and learning from that. So it really helps us to, as a business, to be able to see, okay, what social impact that's making for that thing, and what should we do more of and less of
Yeah.
in the future. And crucial to us overall as how we work is what makes a difference to those people living in our homes and those communities,
Hmm.
and as a housing provider, which interventions make people happier in their lives, thrive in their life, but importantly sustain their tenancies so they can
Mm,
stay in their homes and progress and not be thinking, well, where am I going to be living in the next year? Hopefully, we'll be in
yeah.
a G home, or they might want to go and move off someone else, but that's through their own choice. Uh,
So providing that sense of security, but also that space for them to be part of the wider structure, I guess, or the wider organisation that they're living within.
Yeah, and it's obviously up to the individual, isn't it? What they want to do. So if they want to get involved in their
Yeah.
community,
Hmm.
that should be up to them. But we're really passionate about creating opportunities for people. So if they want to volunteer in their community or take part in
Mm,
activities in their community, that they are available to them. And
hmm.
similarly, if they want to get involved with us as an organisation to give their insight and views, then that's
Mm.
open to them and know how to do that.
We're quite big on participation at Action Fund, and personally, it's really important to me that we get the community voice in all the funds we distribute. It's an interesting space that a lot of people don't quite understand or understand how to start having that process, because it is a different way of, rather than just giving out the funding, it's having your community as part of that funding, or even the fund design, which itself is quite innovative. What channels would you use to involve your community in getting involved in that part of the process?
Yeah, it's a great question, and that can be challenging sometimes, particularly for an organisation, like us. We're quite big, we cover lots of different areas. So we're really excited. So one of the things that we've developing and launching at the moment is a digital platform
Okay.
which enables customers to directly engage with us.
Hmm.
So in the past, we've probably traditionally used quite a traditional way of working, which much more kind of formal meetings and surveys and things, people give their insight to us. But now having that digital platform
Hmm.
allows us to be a lot more flexible, so we'll be able to use that. We're a big organisation, so we've got over 2,000 staff. So we've got various different touch points in terms of people every day going to repair our properties, have
Mm.
conversations with customers and colleagues. So how we can use those, so to kind of pass messages on,
Hmm.
and also where it might be a block of flats or a community centre, how we can use more traditional things such as notices and stuff.
Mm.
So bit of a blended approach. We also use social media quite a bit in terms of kind of Facebook, LinkedIn. We email. We're developing an app for our customers to interact with us. So we've
Yeah.
got a range of different things, but not just relying on one different thing, because everybody might want to respond in a find out something in a different way. So we just try and make sure we're covering all bases.
I guess you've got to find the right fit, and that kind of ties back into that test and learn approach you were saying about innovation. So, kind of, yeah, seeing what channels work best for people, how they're best likely to participate or to feedback, or if you say if they want to at all, and a lot of them might not want to either. You talked there about 2,000 staff, which is a pretty sizable workforce from I guess from the CEO all the way down to, and I say down, it's a bit disparaging, but the people working on the estates and keeping things, holding things together. When you're looking at innovation and you're looking at doing something new or different, how do you get buy-in in an organisation like that? Because it feels like community is very much central to, like we talked about the web, a lot of different parts of the organisation. So how do you get buy-in for something innovative within the organisation?
Great question. I think it's about a range of different things, and you're not going to get buy-in from every single different colleague at different bits because everybody's busy. People are doing lots of different things, but I think it's so much is about relationships. In more recently, we've gone through a kind of locality approach where we've split some of our geography up into different localities,
Okay.
and that's enabled us to have smaller team meetings and smaller groups of people. We call them huddles that happen on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of use those to help build up those local relationships. And then if we wanted to do something, for example, on the Isle of Wight, we can do that. If we wanted to do something in Basingstoke, we can do that because we've got those locality approaches. So getting that buy-in with that one, but also something that we're really keen to do for having the community foundation is that doesn't just sit on its own. That is central to the organisation, so people know what's going on. They're communicated. And I think that one of the great things about working for a housing association is you're really passionate about the fact that your organisation is trying to make a difference in society.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for a bit of
Yes.
purpose in what you do. You talked a lot there about kind of partnership working essentially with lots of people within the organisation. And you also, a little while ago, talked about £100 million within your community
100
foundation.
million. I think we said.
100 million
Yeah. Love it to be
pounds.
100 million. 100 million is quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100 million I think is good enough within the organisation, which is like going to be a massive amount of money to make a really big impact actually within the communities that you're working within. How does partnership working work at the moment within SNG, and how do you see that scaling with that kind of ambition?
So we work in partnership with a lot of organisations at the moment. I think last year we worked with over 400 community groups. So how we see it at the moment is probably around particular themes that we're working on. So that people who are particularly doing stuff around kind of employability and training, and they might be working with us around that area. There's community organisations, such as I mentioned, kind of Pan Together. We work with food banks and digital inclusion organisations. So it's around those themes. But it's probably fairly small scale, the amount of funding that we're doing and how we work with those organisations, but some really great work already going on. It's probably the opportunity to just almost like turbocharge that, I think, with the Community Foundation. That funding's going to be up for 10 years, and having the Community Foundation, so the vehicle to make that happen, not to go for all the motoring metaphors. But then what we will then be doing in terms of the partnerships is being able to think about, okay, what you're ambitious to do, what can you do, how can we work together? Is it an opportunity to scale things up?
Mm-hmm.
Can we look at some external funding to make things happen? And what partners? So we can look at much more longer term partnerships and of a bigger scale than we've been able to do historically as well, because we are a bigger organisation now since the merger, and we're really clear about kind of what that community foundation wants to go on and deliver, which is really exciting. And we work with a range of organisations. We do lots of work with business in the community because we want to work with socially minded businesses. So there's partnerships there, local authorities, community organisations, so people who maybe might be more interested in things that have like a longer term impact. And maybe people that we might have done something and it might be just focused on a 6, 12, 18-month project.
Mm-hmm.
How we can look at that longer term, which is again very very exciting to be able to do a bit more.
Yeah, it's exciting, and having those a different range of partners as well. You touched on a few of them there. What does longer term look like for you? What does a long term partnership?
Well, it's interesting because at the moment we're looking at various opportunities to regenerate, and regeneration could look at like 20 to 30 years easily. So it can be up to that. I think generally how we're working in communities, we definitely kind of want to look like 5, 10 years in terms of kind of how we're funding and working with organisations. But again, where we've got particular plans or opportunities for that community, then we might be looking further ahead. In terms of how it works with our development programme, because we're planning to build about 25,000 homes over the next 10 years. lots of those homes that haven't been built yet, also creating what that might look like in terms of the commercial community facilities on there, and what partnerships are really needed to turn those homes into kind of thriving communities.
Yeah.
Because those people live in those communities, we don't know who they're necessarily going to be yet. But how do we make sure the infrastructure's there at the beginning? Which is really exciting as a building housing association, is how you're creating those new communities, and that's again is something that we're really excited about doing.
There's quite a lot of prediction involved. That's like what,
Yeah,
like, because you're talking about 20, 30
not quite
years.
Mystic Meg.
Not quite, not yet. Not got your magic 8 ball out yet, and you've got communities that don't live there yet. How do you anticipate what that community, and we're living in, let's face it, quite challenging times. How do you even start to model what the community need might be when we're talking about innovation and things like that? Is there anything you use to think about how to plan for that kind of thing in the future?
Yeah, great question, and it's something we probably want to get better at, because it's only more recently that we started to build on a larger scale. So, for example, near Swindon, we're working on development there. It's going to be a couple of thousand homes.
Mm-hmm.
So we started to build on a bigger scale than probably either organisation did previously. I think it's partly looking at kind of what the mix of housing is in terms of the size of properties, what tenure that's going to be, because we know there's probably going to be more support needs if it was some supported housing, or if it was social rented, and if it's for sale or shared ownership, for example, then traditionally they might have needed kind of a bit less support from their landlord than others. But obviously that might change.
Mm-hmm.
And also looking at that wider community at the moment, so that local authority area or that particular ward that's in, what's the makeup, the demographics, the needs of that area at the moment, to help us think about, okay, we're building in this area, but it's next to this area, and these are some of the characteristics, these are some of the community facilities, this is what's happening there.
So you look at what's happening now.
So we can use that, yes, what's happening now, and helps us plan ahead. And they're going to be connected to those communities. So if there's a community organisation just down the road next to where we're building, how do we link up some of our newer residents who are moving into those new properties with those activities and facilities there?
Yeah.
Because I remember I moved into a new build property about 15 years ago with my young daughter, and I didn't know that area, and I wanted to know what activities there were, where she might be able to go to kind of a play group or activities, what was in the area, and it's difficult to know when you first move into someone. So how do we make those things really easy for people so they know what's available there, and that social infrastructure is available?
It's interesting because, like, bringing that back down to present day is probably quite a human condition, isn't it? Just like the human condition of connection within those communities, and how do you facilitate, as a housing association, the connection between the residents, the retailers, the other partners that you have doing activities there?
I think there's kind of traditionally been a bit of a view, and it's something we're trying to move away with, where it'd almost be a bit of a paternalistic approach with kind of housing providers and others, where you kind of have to provide a service, and you're doing to people, but much more how you're providing information to people, but you're doing with them, and people are able to kind of feed in and tell you what they want to do. So how we can give communities and people there knowledge about what services we've got going, but also helping them to do things for themselves. And that might be through, accessing funding, through our quite new partnership, that might enable them to go and do something to do themselves in that area, rather than us doing so, not making too many assumptions, but helping people understand what tools. And one of the things that we've got coming on in the next few months we're really excited on is some work that we're looking at around community organising. So how we can train and support some of our people who are really keen in our communities to do things, to go and to have the tools, have the resources, get more activity, because those connections are so important, aren't they? I know we all kind of found it through the pandemic in particular, that if you've got that network of people in your area that you can turn to for support, it is really important. So how we can just support that to happen is really important.
Well, we are all about connection at Action Fund. It's literally what our platform is built on, is matching and connecting people. So that works out very well for us. Just pedaling back a bit to partnership, though all of this is partnership working, whether you're a business or local authority or a resident, it's all working in partnership together. What would you say are some of the challenges of working in partnership with different organisations?
So it can be lots of challenges. It can be quite time consuming. I think sometimes partnerships. I think sometimes there is that thing about the right place and time. Like, have you got the capacity? Are you really clear on aims, and are there shared aims? So I think if one organisation's approaching things from from a particular angle, then you might not be there yet. So an example might be that for us, we're developing our community investment approach and community foundation, but some areas we haven't got teams in place yet, so we're still looking at developing that, and that means that some of the things that we want to do in terms of developing some of our partnerships might have to wait for 6 to 12 months in some areas where if we haven't got staff in post, and but a partner might not necessarily understand that. So just be really clear and honest, I think, with each other, I think is really important. So you kind of know that, and you, yeah, I think having that shared vision, but it can be challenging if you are not quite on the same page and maybe haven't had that honest conversation, and that relationships, you can be kind of trusting with each other, but that comes over a bit of time.
Yeah, totally. And also, it's understanding the different scales of size of the organisation, or like you said, where you're having to build capacity to almost create a whole new. I guess this ties back to innovation, to create a whole new service or a whole new part of your business in order to manage that partnership. And that's, I suppose, one of the challenges of innovation.
It is, yeah, no, it is a challenge that you do things, and sometimes innovation does take kind of time, and you have to do it kind of
Mm,
carefully. And sometimes when you're trying to rush things out, you can just not have that space. So also, if you are trying to innovate, have you got the time to do that? If you haven't, then it's best not doing it half baked. To think carefully about
mm-hmm.
how you're doing it. And one of the things that's so important about innovation is learning. So learning from what you're
Yeah.
doing, and is it an opportunity to scale up it and expand it, or has it not gone to plan? What do you need to kind of rework and redo?
Mm-hmm.
But unless you've got the capacity and time to be able to do that properly, then
Mm-hmm.
just think carefully about what you are doing.
Finishing on a positive, what are the opportunities then around innovations and partnerships?
Yeah, I think there's loads of opportunities. This is one thing that I'm really excited about. We've had a couple of partnership events over the last few weeks, and that's been one of the fantastic things is people coming to us with ideas and opportunities about how they might want to work with us in the
Mm-hmm.
future. So I think some of the opportunities are that we've got newer areas where maybe there hasn't been much activity in the past, that we can really kind of scale things up and test those partnerships. I'm really excited about those different ways that we can give out funding, and we'll be able to get much greater insight from our customers and our colleagues
Yeah.
around what we're trying to do. And I think that'd be really exciting. So I'm really looking forward to really kind of seeing what comes out of that, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the type of programs and projects that come out of it, but also really the buzz and excitement that's going to bring us as an organisation working with our customers in a very different way.
Yeah.
It'd be very exciting.
Nice. That is exciting. It's nice to finish on a bit of a buzz. That's great. Thanks, Andrew. Um, we always ask everyone on the podcast for a key takeaway, and we're all about action at Action Funder. So we've been talking a lot about innovation and innovative thinking. So what's one thing that someone can take away today to start creating positive impact in their business?
I think there's lots of things that you can do. I think sometimes it can be quite a simple thing. So having a conversation with an organisation or person that you maybe haven't done before, and just seeing where that
Mm.
leads you. And that might be a charity, it might be a business, it could be a kind of a colleague,
Mm-hmm.
and just having a conversation with them about something that you might be passionate about, and you don't know where that's going to lead you. Because I think
Mm.
sometimes we go to the same people all the time, and just having those different conversations with different people. Part of innovation is something amazing might happen, or it might just be that you end up having a slightly different conversation. But
Yeah.
go and have a chat.
That's really good advice. It's how we started, Andrew. It's just having a chat. Do you want to have a
Yeah,
chat about Action Funder and what we've got?
yeah.
And it's ended up in this great partnership.
And don't just go to people that you already
Yeah,
know, already working with. Go and try someone new as well.
yeah, great. Really good advice. Well, thanks for your time, Andrew. on this podcast, and thanks for breaking the mould with us. It's been great talking to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Breaking the Mould. Join us next month when we feature another brilliant voice from the world of positive impact. You can subscribe to Action Funder on your podcast player to be notified when that episode drops. In the meantime, visit actionfunder.org to find more inspiring leaders driving change in our communities. Whilst you're there, make the most of the tools to find grassroots non-profits and learn how you can make an impact on people, planet and profit. Finally, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate our show. This will help more people discover the show and get inspired.